Hey guys, welcome back to another review. Today we'll be reviewing the Wallhack CR-005. This is the new generation of mousepad from them. This is the control model with a slight bit of texture as they market it. It is meant for more of the TAC FPS slower games where you're going to need more control. And let's break into it. First, breaking in a texture. As I said before, it is a micro etch texture. It just has a slight bit of texture. It's not a thing like a Hana where it's extremely smooth, but it's not something like you have a Phantom or a Zane where they're extremely textured. It just kind of has a little bit of texture to it. Kind of lets you have a tiny bit of skate feel, but you don't have a huge amount. I will be breaking more into skates later, but for this review, most of the part, I will be using Cyclone Pros. Those are my personal favorite when it comes to mousepads. On this mousepad, they are quite slow, but we'll break more into that later. So when it comes to texture, you do have a little bit of skate feel. It's nothing crazy. It's just a tad bit. And on hand texture, you feel a little bit, but it's once again not insanely noticeable, but it's also not completely smooth. So obviously the thing y'all are probably wondering most about is the control or the speed of the pad. So when it comes to it, let's be real here. This is one of the more controlled mouse pads in the market. So if that's something you're looking for, this is probably the review for you. I mean, just up base, like just moving my mouse around, initial friction, it is very slow. It does have that control, and I think the texture also allows you to have that bit more micro adjustment versus like a smooth mouse pad like the Tora. You can kind of have issues where you don't have any control when you're micro adjusting just because it's so smooth. You do have that here. You do have that little bit of micro texture to help you aim a little bit further when it comes to micro adjustments. When it comes to the speed, like in game, I had some issues with it. I think it's mostly just how the pad feels. I have some skin stick where like when I'm micro adjusting, I feel my hand just getting stuck on it, and it causes me to, like, when I'm flicking, I kind of get stuck on the way to the flick where I actually under flick. So that's my main issue when it comes to the speed of this pad. I just really struggle with a mixture of skin stick along with the slowness of it. It just isn't a great combo. I know this pad is encoded, but it just hasn't been great for me in that experience. Enough of yapping, let's move on to the size and millimeters. Now, breaking into size, this mousepad comes in at 490 by 430 with a 3mm thickness. It is noticeably less thick than the past generations. They do have the more rounded edges that almost kind of give like a very matte, clean look. I do enjoy that. It's probably my favorite aspect of this pad is the clean matte edges. And this mousepad also does come in at $130. I thought I'd note that for y'all. So when it comes to the base, it has the square pattern base that the old ones had, but it's a bit better done. This pad isn't going to move anywhere. I mean, even pushing with both my hands at full force, it's barely moving. I don't think it's something you should worry about. With most of the glass pads nowadays, we really don't have much issues with the full silicone bases. The only ones I try to stay away from are the very smooth silicone bases, but this one has plenty of texture and it's shaped well where it doesn't really move around. So that's not something you're going to have to worry about. So I did want to cover a few other skates, as you guys have seen, the Cyclone Pros. So now we have the Jade Airs. So the Jade Airs make it a little bit faster. I wouldn't say it's still, I would say it's still in the control area, but it's more leaning towards the balance side instead of full control. This still has skate feel. You have good skate feel. I think it's kind of similar to Cyclone Pros when it comes to that. It is a tiny bit faster. It's not insanely different. I think this pad doesn't have a huge variation when it comes to skate feel. Next up, we're going to have the U9s. Obviously, control scale and control glass is not a smart idea, but I did want to show you in case someone wants ultimate control. You're going to have the speed of like a 0 or even slower when it comes to that. I mean, obviously, it's not going to feel like a 0. It's not going to be anything like that. But when it comes to straight initial friction, it's slower than a 0, like with the U9s. And I do want to cover, I don't think it's fair to really compare glass to cloth. They're just completely different things and they're not very similar. So I'm not going to be doing that. But when it comes to these, this is the Silver Foxes as well. I would say this is kind of similar to Jade Airs. It makes it a little bit faster. It's not anything insane. It's going to stay below balance no matter what you do to it, unless you just throw oil over the pad. So that's my kind of thoughts at skates. I think that anything balanced or speed oriented would be your best bet. I would not recommend control with this. Okay, breaking into my main thing about this mousepad that I've had issues with. Obviously, we're here for the good and the bad. You've heard most of the good, most of my input. But when it comes to the bad, I have had some really bad experience with skin stick on this pad. I think you can even hear it on my microphone. It is really loud when it comes to my sleeve as well, but especially when it comes to just hand stick, This pad has really bad skin stick for me. I have had a lot of issues, especially on my hand, even when I'm using off like a sleeve like this. I stay away from the palm sleeves just because I feel like I have some issues when it comes to not having more control. I like having that bit of texture with my thumb because I palm. But even with arm sleeves like this, I feel slowed down a lot. Like normally with sleeves you feel faster, right? But I feel even slower than with no arm sleeve. But in general, I've had really bad skin stick, especially with my arm, and when it comes to micro adjustments, it's a huge struggle for me. So that's my main thing with this mouse pad. I will say that I've heard there's a lot of issues with surface variation, meaning that some people have had faster mouse pads, like some people CR-005 I've heard are faster in the VA or SP04, and some are really slow. Mine's obviously, as you can tell, on the slower end of the scale. And I've heard some people don't have my skin stick issue. They don't have any issues with it. So it could just be a surface variation issue. That is something to note. I've had really bad skin stick with mine personally, and it's kind of made me not want to use the mouse pad, to be fully honest with you. But that's my honest thoughts when it comes to that. And when it comes to just hand feel, it's just like I said, the skin stick's been ruining it for me. It is nice to have that bit of texture though. I do think it's great for micro adjustments, but the skin stick combined with it has just been horrible for me. Now we're going to break into comparisons and then my overview. I appreciate you guys listening. Breaking into our first comparison, we have the Tora here. So when it comes to the etching and the texture feel, they are quite similar. I would say that I feel maybe 10% more texture on the CR-005. It's not a drastic difference. I would say that this is still pretty smooth. It's not as smooth as like an SP04 where it's very, very hockey table-ish, but it does have a little bit of texture, but nothing crazy. So when it comes to speed, I do feel that the CR-005 is a bit quicker. The Taurus honestly has always been considered a muddy pad. Even when you're just doing like simple dynamic friction, it's very muddy to me. You feel very slow. You don't really feel like you have much speed or any fluidity in your movement. This does have a little bit less muddiness, and you kind of get a little bit more control, or a little bit more towards the balanced area where you're not feeling like you're getting completely slowed down, having no fluidity with the mouse pad. So this is definitely more controlled when it comes to that. Obviously the bases are completely different. This has like a foamish base and this has the silicone. Thickness wise, this is a little bit taller, and edges wise, I would say that the CR-005 is way better. That's about it I can say for this, and let's get into the SP04. So breaking in the next comparison, we have the SP04 course versus the CR-005. I do think they are extremely similar in texture. It's like under a 5% difference. I was wrong in the past saying that it was a lot smoother. I would say that the CR-005 is almost on par. Like it's hard to tell because I feel like the feeling of this mouse pad is completely different. This feels slower, just push it, like running my hand across it. And obviously this feels a bit faster, but when it comes to like texture, I would say that they're pretty similar. They just have a different feel when it comes to your hand feel. Obviously when it comes to the difference in speed, it's pretty drastic. You're going to be experiencing a speed oriented or balancing speed, whatever you want to call the SP04, versus a fully controlled mouse pad. It's completely drastic differences. Obviously the height's better on the CR-005. I think they did a great improvement when it comes to the edges and the overall thickness and even the base. I think everything has been an improvement when it comes to that. I just don't think they've improved on the skin stick whatsoever. I would even argue that my SP04 feels a lot better on my wrist and my arm than this does. It just slows me down. I feel stuck and I feel like I just don't have enough control. And for the last review, we're going to bring into a balance pad, which is the Rosa. So with the Rosa, this is obviously more of a balance pad. I would argue that they're pretty similar in texture. I would say the Rosa has a little bit more texture. When it comes to speed, obviously this is the more control, whereas we have a more balanced leaning pad here. I would argue the Rosa is probably a more all-rounded balanced pad, whereas this is control. I wouldn't really put this in the control leaning balance category for the CR-005. When it comes to feel, like on my arm, I once again just don't have that as much skin stick on either one. Obviously with the sleeve it's a bit better, but I haven't really ran into much issue with the Rosa when it comes to skin stick, whereas I felt a lot more on the CR-005. When it comes to the skate texture, I notice a bit less on the Rosa. I can feel more skate texture. On micro adjustments, I do feel a little less slippery on the CR-005, and that's kind of it for my thoughts. Let's break into my final thoughts. So I'm going to do a quick, short, and sweet final conclusion. I'm gonna start with the good and end with the bad. First, for the good, the base has been great. It doesn't move anywhere. It feels great. The edges are great. I love the matte black look. When it comes to the actual like control of the mouse pad, I love it. I think it's a great speed to be at for tech FPS. But when it comes to skin stick, this is where it gets bad. I just have had a horrible experience with my unit. I just feel slowed down. I feel like I lost a lot of the fluidity in my control of my aim, and I just haven't been enjoying it for that. Even with a sleeve, it just rubs on my hand, and it's just been really unenjoyable. But when it comes to that, I also can say that there might be some surface variation here. Yours may not be the same. I can't speak on that. I've heard so many different stories of how different ones feel. Texture, like I said, it's just micro etched. It's not anything crazy, but it's not ultra smooth. So it's kind of in the middle there. You're not going to have any mind-blowing thoughts about it. But yeah, that's kind of my thoughts, the good and the bad. I appreciate you guys listening, and thank you for watching.
Thank you for watching.